Hello guys and welcome, it's me Tarun. So today's video we are going to be talking about the starter motor. How does a starter motor works? So let's get into this week's video. And first of all I want to tell one thing alone, and that would be that in this week's video I don't have a starter motor to explain you in depth about how, but I'm going to tell you about everything you need to know about it. But one thing is I'm going to show how it looks also, but the video is sourced from somebody else and the video doesn't belong to me, so just an information I wanted to tell. So starting off this week's video, I want to tell one thing around. Please consider subscribing to my channel, like this video and share this video please. I put a lot of effort for you guys teaching these things. So just a kind little respect, or like let's say an affection for your friend Tarun as a car guy. Please consider subscribing to my channel. That's all I want you, and it's free, just a small click. It might take you half a second. That's okay. Starting off with, I want to tell you one thing is that power is equal to voltage times current. This is not for the engine I'm saying, this is for the electric motor. So electrics itself, how do you calculate the power for it? So in car we calculate power, which is equal to horsepower. Horsepower has its own derivation of formulas, and we know that. For example, torque is equal to force multiplied in a distance, which is known as torque. Horsepower, it's a big derivation. I'll teach you in next week's video or the next video itself. So power for electric motors is known as power is equal to voltage times current. Voltage is different, current is different. I'm just 8th, okay? I don't know that much about voltage and current. I know what's the difference between voltage and current. They're not the same, okay? So voltage and current. For example, we'll see in the examples, but let's now see. That's the power for that one. And this is not how a starter motor looks. So if you want to know how a starter motor looks, this is how a starter motor looks without this is how a starter motor looks. And this is how a starter motor looks when cut, how it looks inside. So I did try to draw as much as possible, and that's how I can get it. So that's what I wanted to tell you. A starter motor is helped to start an engine. Starting an engine is a big process. In the early 90s, starting your engine was very difficult. Okay, let's go to the history some, and then let's start. Okay, it won't be boring, I promise you. So in the early 90s, what happened was you have a handle. Okay, here is the video of just see that. Okay, there is a handle, a specific handle, and that handle is directly connected to the crankshaft. You have to spin it a couple of times to get to the power stroke, because the power stroke is usually the third stroke for everything. It's not usually, it's the third stroke. So that's what I wanted to tell you. So getting through all those strokes, it's very the handle will be unpredictable. Sometimes broken limbs, hands, everything was a part of it. So it was dangerous. So what happened in the early 1912? I don't know whose name, but here is his video. He is the person from the Cadillac company, was the first company or the first inventor. The inventor in Cadillac invented the first starter motor. Take a look at this video. Okay. If you can see, he couldn't start it, but it was just a prototype. You can see it was bulk, but now it's short. I'm going to tell you how and why. So let's get into that. That's how the starter motors used to start. But before the starter motors, if you can see, the size was large. Notice that video when I showed you, the size was large. It was depictedly large, and that's how. Why is that a reason? Okay, here take a look at this starter motor, the side graph. It says 500 amps. For example, this particular Miata, the MX-5, if you don't know, Mazda Miata, that starter motor takes about 400 amps. Wait, which is equal to 400 amps. Okay, I'm writing it here, 400 amps. That's different from voltage. Voltage is different. Current is what? Amps. It's stated in amps. Okay, so 400 amps is the take. So 400 amps is quite large. You think just 400 amps doesn't matter that much. First, let me let you know one thing. Okay, so an amp, the 400 amps which I'm saying right over here, it is not all the current, like the temporary starter motor required power. 400 amps is only required in a cold day when the engine is lot cold and the oils are much thicker, whereas it requires lot of energy. That's when 400 amps will be taken. But without that, just the 400 amps, how it is achieved? That's how, like I tell you, the coal, 400 amps. Nothing, no part of the car, even the fuel relay system, the fuel pumps, the headlights, the radios, maybe the heated seats and all those features, none of them come close to this 400 amp or even 200 amps, even maybe 200 plus, maybe, but between the 300, that's it. None of the system in car, none of the features or the system in a car comes close to a starter motor or require as much as power as a starter motor. So this is how when a colder day it takes about 400 amps, but in a hotter day when it's hot and the engine oil is a lot warmer and you have already started the engine, it may well as take us 200 to 250 350 amps maximum. That's all. That's what it is. So voltage, a normal car battery takes about, which is equal to 12 has a standard battery, a good battery or a used battery too has about a standard of 12.4 volts, not amps, 12.4 to 12.8, let's say 13 itself, round off, this is equal to 13, but this is the value 12.4 to 12.8. That's the standard. You might be thinking just reduce the power of the battery. No, this is for petrol I'm talking about. Diesels, they have much more bigger combustion, same thing, the same principle, but requires more power. That's what I'm saying. Not every starter motors have 400 amps or others, but the diesel trucks, not everything has 400 amps. This Miata is a small engine, a small capacity, so it just takes 400 amps. A big diesel truck maybe takes more power than this, let's say 1000 amps even, maybe, I don't know, but it takes a lot because diesels, a lot of compression involving in them. That's why you have to understand about that one. So that's what 12.4 to 12.3. A normal battery has that much. One thing you want to know, just like I said before, starter, they take lot of current. If you have noticed this in a bit, like in the early scientists, what they do, if they're taking a lot of power and there's a switch for that. Okay, you start your engine. Nowadays we start the engine elegantly with a small key. That's it. You just turn. First turn, second turn and third turn. First is just the accessories which may be involving your just turning on the radio. The second one, all the powers to the your gauges turn on, your windows roll down, up, everything. And the third is a start where you can feel the giddiness. Okay, here's the video of me starting my car. See that? Okay, first watch the video. Torque. The force required to turn the key around. I couldn't turn the third key with the same amount of force which I did for the first two turns. And that is why that's a safety switch, and it's not just a safety switch, I'll tell you. Okay, so the early switches you can see in that video which I showed you, there was a big switch for that amount of current. And same thing, your starter motor takes so much current just like that. What do? In the early 90s there was a foot switch just like that to make sure you can start your car a bit more elegantly at those times after the 1912, after I showed that video. So that's how the early peoples, like the early 90s cars, used to start their engines. And from the early 1980s onwards, we had the starter system with small keys. That's it. That's how it looked. So the big switches, why a lot amount of current? Think about this. From the battery to the starter motor, from the wires, the electric current travels through the wires. When traveling through the wires, what happens is that small amount of current is lost, about 12.4 to 12.8, right? When you reach in the starter motor, it just reaches about 12.1 or even 12. That's it. You need at least 12 to 12.1 volts to at least start your car. The starter motor requires that much at least. Amps, it's different. I'll tell later on. That's different. That's how much volts. That's how much watts it's required. The power. That's how much watts is equal to voltage times current. So let's say 12 times 400. Let's take the maximum, which is around 14,800 amps. Yeah, 14,800 watts, which is equal to 4.8 kilowatts. Okay, that's how it looks. So 4.8 kilowatts, that's how much it takes. That's how much power it needs to power it up. Think about this mains motor. I'm showing you this image. Okay, this mains motor just takes about 2.8 volts, but you can see the difference in the design itself. It has cooling fins because the mains motor, the power motor, which is required for endurance, and this is not designed for endurance. The starter motor is designed to give you burst of power for the seconds, not for minutes. Okay, so the starter motor, just like I'm saying, it's only designed for bursts of power, not for endurance. That's the reason it doesn't have the cooling fins, even though it is twice as small as the motor, the mains motor, and twice as powerful. That's the reason. So generally electric currents and the motors, they have instant torque, and they are better than engines. That's why instant torque, instant delivery and everything. That's the reason they're better. I do accept it. What to do? As a car guy, I have to accept electrics are best. That's bad for me too. What to do? So that's what I wanted to tell you. 4.8 kilowatts is the power of this. A general kettle takes about 1.2 kilowatts. That's it. So this is how we calculate kilowatts. I mean watts. That's the power. Power, voltage times current is equal to watts. Volt times amps. The amount of volts times amps is equal to voltage. Amps and volt together makes voltage, which is the power. Note that one. So that's how it makes the power. If you can see now, let's move on to the main thing now to elegantly reduce it. And the starting, I'll show you that one, don't worry. So nowadays to start like that, we need wires, okay? So let's say just like this, a wire from the beginning, let's say, like I showed you in the before, the big clunky foot which you didn't want. So to elegantly change it, we have switches. For example, let's take this Mazda Miata or any other car. Some cars, they have the battery in the front compartment, which I mean the compartment means in the engine bay. Some of them having the rear boot space in the sides, maybe in the down even. So that's different. So it's because of weight distribution or and something else. Maybe they don't have enough space. Sometimes it happens in BMWs. That's what I wanted to say. So that there are some difference. So from the rear trunk space, or from the rear trunk to the engine bay, first I will tell you one thing. I forgot to tell you about one thing. The starter motor is located in your transmission bell housing. A bell housing is a bell housing is a covering for a transmission. It is make sure to protect all the road dust or any other water, to make sure the water doesn't get inside the transmission casing where it has the throwout bearing. Next to the bell housing in front, okay, why do I think there are flywheels? Flywheel is required to start the engine, and flywheel for the particular weight, you know, like the power stroke, it happens 1 in 3 times only for a piston. So there are 4 pistons. I don't know how some people, they have different power strokes. So it depends, okay. To make sure the engine keeps on rotating, even if between reaching the strokes, you need a flywheel, and you need a flywheel for starting and running the engine itself. A bad flywheel means your engine doesn't run properly. A flywheel acts as a balancer too, like it gives the balance to the pistons. When the pistons, the power stroke, the reaching between the next power stroke to the next power stroke, you need the force to keep on continuing, the weight, okay, to keep on rotating, you need the flywheel. That's why the flywheel is being used. So that's how the power, the voltage, and that's it. So the starter motor. Now let's begin in the solenoid. You know why solenoid is used, you know, not solenoid but solenoid, okay. So the reason for a solenoid is because that, like I said before, the early 90s, the big clunky clutch, you don't want that to change this. This is how a solenoid is used. A solenoid, what it does, it's the solenoid gets a small pair of electric current. What it does, a small amount of electric current is sent to the solenoid, and the solenoid inside has a switch in it, and it has it has copper wires inside it. What happens is that there's a plunger inside here, a plunger is being pulled inside. It's been pulled because of the electromagnetic force. It's been pulled in, and there's a switch. This is how it looks, okay. This is how the switch looks, and this is how bad the plunger is, and it's connected to the armature, okay. It's connected to the armature, and when being pulled, it hits the switch, which has a copper bridging here. A copper bridging is located there, at the copper bridger. The copper bridger is being attached to the switch, and the switch is being pushed back by the electromagnetic force of the plunger. That's it. It's simple. The plunger gets pulled back by the electromagnetic force of the copper wires, and when the switch is being pushed back, the copper wire is being bridged by the bridger. The bridger. This is the bridger. Bridges to the terminals, to both the terminals, and the terminals are for the positive terminal for the motor to spin the motor, the starter motor, which is here. This is the starter motor, and this is a solenoid. That's why I written here solenoid. This is the starter motor. This gets power. Once this gets powered, it just sends power to the motor. But one thing, the amount of power which it sends, the amount of torque which it sends to the pinion to rotate the flywheel isn't enough to start the motor. Okay, so the pinion is 8 teeth, and let's say the Miata has 112 teeth in the flywheel. So 112 by what? 8. 112 by 14. No, 112 by something. I don't know. I just forgot about that one. So the reduction is equal to the number of teeth. The pinion and the flywheel reduction, this is for that one, okay. I'm saying a different one. The pinion and the flywheel, the reduction is equal to pinion, the number of teeth in the flywheel by the number of teeth in the pinion, and that is the derivation or the formula for the reduction. That's the formula for the reduction from the pinion to the flywheel. That's how much torque, but that isn't enough. So that's why we use a planetary gear system. a planetary or an epicyclic gear system. And a planetary or an epicyclic gear train consists of a sun gear. This is the sun gear which I have drew in black color. This is the sun gear, and these blue gears are ring gears, and they are attached to the ring gear, which I said you, the ring gear. And then the power from the sun gear to the planetary gears, and the planetary gears have to send the power, right? Because it's fixed in a position, it keeps spinning, it creates much more torque. So to get that power, once again what you do is attach a carrier. This is how a carrier looks, but here is a video of a carrier in 3D, how it looks. This is how it looks. So the planetary and the epicyclic gearing, that's how it looks. This itself is reducing the speed by many times. There are a lot of formulas involved in this. I'm just studying right now, so I'll make a video in the future about this one. So this itself is reducing a lot of times. The torque is increased, and then you still have the pinion to the flywheel. Think about this, how much torque is involved. That's how we can start the engine. Creating these types of things, that means we can create these ring gears and pinions and all those stuff out of cheap metals. Some things like the ring gears and the sun gears can be made up of nylon and sintering, etc. That's how it's cheap. And you can find this planetary and epicyclic gear train in many things like your drills and starter motors officially. So that's what I'm telling. Now that's how a starter motor works, how it looks like, and this is how you get the enough torque to overcome it. Now we have some problems with the starter motor. Pinion gets engaged with the flywheel. What about it doesn't get engaged? What about it just slips off it? What will you do? For example, it just looks like this. Wait, if you can see, let's say this is the pinion and the flywheel, and they're same gearings. Let's say this is the teeth, you know, this like the teeth, okay? What happens? Think about this. Sometimes what if the flywheel and the pinion, both the gears gets hit just like that? See, that's what I'm coming to say. Just together hits like this. It doesn't merge. There's a space behind. You can see pushing all the force, and yeah, the teeth just got broke. How to avoid this? How do you avoid this in a flywheel and a pinion? How do you do this? Okay, now let's see about that. That's the reason. See, I just chipped the teeth out of this. I knew about this. That's why there are many inventions. Okay, we car guys or the automobile engineers, we aren't dumb. We are engineers, not dumb. Okay, now see here, that's what I wanted to tell you. What about the pinion gets attached, not attached to the flywheel? Okay, how to make sure? That's what I'm saying. By beveling the pinion. This is how bevel looks. Okay, this isn't a good drawing. I'll move here. That is how the picture I showed you right now. Okay, I'll show you the picture once again. That's how the beveling looks in a gear, in a pinion. It makes sure the pinion slips right into the flywheel. Even though if it mismatches, it slips onto the flywheel. Okay, see this video here. It just slips onto it, so there will be no problems. Even if, okay, let's say even if it doesn't, and it just tightly hold on to it, what will you do? It's not possible. But another way is the helical splines of the armature. What is the armature, which I said you before itself? This is the armature. I'm just drawing once again it in black. This is the armature. Okay, I'll just like draw on upon it. So that's the armature. The armature, when connected to the pinion, what happens is that there is a case. Okay, it has splines in it, helical splines. So when you push it front, okay, in the helical splines, what happened? The splines move anti-clockwise. And then there's another problem we have to solve. What if someone starts the car while it's running? Okay, starting the car is to make sure it's running. While it's running, if you start it, what does that mean? What happens when you try starting the car once again while it's running? And first of all, let me tell you, the modern day cars, it's not even possible. You can't achieve this at all. Please guys, I asked you already in the first part of the video, please, I'm begging you, please consider subscribing to my channel and like this video, please. That's what. So that's what I wanted to say. What about sometimes there are cases, maybe someone starts like that and it may cause damage, but now modern cars, it's not possible. Even though there is a one-way clutch, I'll explain that one-way clutch, it's not possible at all. So you don't need to worry about that. How? Let me explain you that part. So how to make sure that modern day cars don't get started. Modern day cars do from the early 2005s, and how is that, you know, in manuals and in automatics you need to be put in park or neutral. It's impossible in a normal car, in a manual car. Now we are talking about the classic starter motor. So in a manual car, you need to officially, like, you have to press the clutch and make sure that you are in neutral to start the car. There is a neutral safety switch. It's not possible, okay? I don't have enough space, so I'm just showing you, okay? This is my classwork. You can see the relay. That's how it looks. For a manual car, you have the ignition switch, which I told you, the two circuits. One for the ignition part and all the other circuits alone, and the second one for the starter motor. That's why it separates. See if you can see, separates. That's why you have the fuse. Make sure it gets the right amount of power. If it overpowers, it will stop, because you don't want a detrimental damage to your parts of the car. So then it moves on to the starter relay and then to the neutral safety switch to make sure it's neutral. Then if it checks that, the starter relay says okay and the power goes through the starter solenoid and the starter motor officially works. And the negative terminal, because this is a circuit, because the metal body of the starter motor is metal. Yes, it's metal body, so it's metal, and it's connected directly to the engine. You can just pair it directly to the starter motor and then connect more than 3-4 earthing steps or many, how much ever you want, depends on the power, from the engine to the chassis of it, the subframe to the frame itself. Let's say even if you put it in neutral and try starting it while it's running, here's the part. There is a one-way clutch in your car known as a sprag clutch or a cam clutch, okay? A sprag or a cam clutch, that's what it's, a sprag. That's why we say it as sprag clutches, or just known as a one-way clutch, and it's located here. You see, I put a red dash right over here. That's where it locates, okay? I couldn't draw in 3D, I'm really sorry about that one, but that's where it is located. Here's a video of it, how it looks, the clutch itself. You see how much parts are in it, and that's where the sprag, a sprag looks like a number 8. This is not the sprag, this is the sprag, okay? I'll just put a box, okay? It just looks like a number 8, and that's good. You know why? Because first of all, the sprag or the one-way clutch is just like a bearing. It's a bearing actually. So how it looks is that an outer race is connected to the motor, which is the starter motor, and the inner race is connected to the pinion. When the starter motor spins clockwise, the pinion too does spin just like that. I'm showing you this video, okay? See in the video, what happens is that the sprag tightens up with the inner race and the outer race and jamming them together. When they are wedged or jammed together, then they are connected and they spin. If you know the engine spins anti-clockwise, this is the pin. When it spins clockwise, see, this spins clockwise. Where does this spin? It spins this anti-clockwise. See, I'm spinning it in clockwise. When your engine spins anti-clockwise, and that immense force, the immense RPM, the torque wouldn't get passed through, because the inner race, when it rotates anti-clockwise and this rotates clockwise, the sprags are loosened. They are not tight. They are not spinning the same direction. So what happens? The inner race, the pinions keep spinning freely, but still there is a damage, but it's possible that the armature and the pinion will get damaged because of the force. So that's what I wanted to tell you guys this week's video, and that's about the starter motor. Hope you like this week's video. I'm really sorry I couldn't get the starter motor, and the next video is about the detailing part. I didn't detail it fully because I had problems. I got clay bars and all those stuff, okay? The next week's video is going to be about that one, and I'm really sorry I have posted 2 days later about the car daily post about that one, weekly post. Sorry, I'm sorry about that. Please forgive me. And that's it for this week's video. Hope you guys like this video. Please consider subscribing to my channel. It's free. I teach you everything about cars. I have textbooks about automobiles. So please consider subscribing to my channel. Like this video, share this video, and I'll see you guys next time around. Thank you for watching this week's video. Peace.